my name's Tim Spears. I'm a fire inspector with the Colorado Springs Fire Department. Throughout these safety videos, we've covered many important safety topics from commercial kitchen safety to classroom safety. What we'd like to do today is focus on science classroom safety and cover many of the important safeguards and safety features built into the science classroom. We'd also like to talk about some of the hazards that are associated with the classroom to help you be better prepared in case of an emergency. Before we begin and before we talk about some of those special safety features and safeguards found in a science classroom, it's important that we also identify some of those common safety things that we also need to keep in mind in any classroom. Those include making sure that we don't block our fire extinguishers, we don't hang things from our sprinkler heads. Also too, that we don't block or lock our exit doors. Because if there is an emergency in the science classroom, we want to make sure that those fire protection features operate properly and we can get out in case there's an emergency. Next, what I'd like to talk about are the many important safety features and safeguards found in a science classroom. These include things such as the emergency eye wash station, the emergency shower, portable fire extinguisher, a fire blanket, and emergency gas shutoff. It's important that teachers take the time to educate students at the beginning of the year so that way they know how to operate these devices in case there's an emergency, and also too that if any substitutes would happen to be in the classroom, that they can also instruct students on how to use these devices in case there is a chemical exposure or a chemical spill. These devices are very important to make sure that we maintain them clear and unobstructed and that we actually maintain them properly. So again, making sure that we educate people on how to use them is one of the most important things that we can do in a science classroom. I'd like to take a moment to really talk and discuss the emergency shower and eye wash station. It's important that these devices be located in an area that somebody can access them within 10 seconds of a chemical spill or a chemical exposure. Also too, it's important that we do not put anything in front of those items. We want to make sure that these items, just like everything else from fire protection features to fire extinguishers, things like that, that we maintain these areas clear and unobstructed in case of emergency. Also, these devices do require periodic maintenance. For example, the emergency shower does require a weekly inspection and a weekly flow test. So it's important that we flow water from these so that way we understand and we know how they operate and that they will operate in case there's an emergency. So earlier we mentioned making sure that we maintain the emergency shower and eye wash station clear and unobstructed. But we also want to make sure that we maintain the remainder of these devices clear and unobstructed, such as this fire blanket, our fire extinguisher, and our emergency gas shutoff. As we can see here, our fire blanket, we've got some tape on that fire blanket. The tape will actually stop people from being able to access that cabinet and will delay the response and use of that fire blanket. These fire blankets are made of flame retardant material, so that way it helps smother fires that are on people's clothing. So it's important that we can gain access to these immediately. Also to the fire extinguisher, if there is a fire in the classroom and we need to utilize that fire extinguisher, it's important that we can gain access to it immediately, along with this gas shutoff here. As we can see, this gas shutoff has a push button switch that has to be reset with a key. So if there is an emergency in the classroom with these additional safety features, it's important that we maintain these safety features clear and unobstructed at all times, and that everybody knows where their location is and how to use them properly in case there's an emergency. There are some additional safety features that we have built into the science classroom, such as this hood here. So if we're doing experiments that could expose the classroom students to some vapors from those experiments, it's important that we do utilize this hood. Making sure that we have ventilation within the classroom and be able to evacuate those products from those experiments to the outside and be able to keep everybody safe inside. So throughout this video, we've talked about the many important safety features and safeguards that you'll find in a science classroom. But what I'd like to do now is take a moment and talk about the chemical storage also within a science classroom. It's important that schools make sure that they maintain an inventory of their chemicals, noting the expiration date and also the condition of the chemicals. So if those chemicals do become expired or the packaging of those chemicals becomes compromised, that we make sure that we remove them from the lab and we dispose of them properly. So in addition to the inventory, we want to make sure that all of our chemicals are properly labeled. In addition to this labeling, we want to make sure that the chemicals and all the chemicals are provided with a material safety data sheet. These are also going to be known in the future as a safety data sheet. These sheets provide information in regards to the product description, and safety measures should be taken in case there's a chemical spill or a chemical exposure. These should be provided on site and provided to the first responders in case of an emergency. We've talked about the importance of making sure that we maintain an inventory of our chemicals, and also too that we make sure that each of our chemicals are labeled and they're provided with their material safety data sheet or their safety data sheet. but it's also important that we don't store incompatible chemicals together. It's important that we make sure that we separate the storage of these so that way they can't mix and pose a physical or health hazard to the occupants within the science classroom. Also too, we want to make sure that we secure our chemicals from unauthorized access. We can see here we've got our flammable liquids cabinet with our flammable liquid storage behind it. It's important that we make sure that if we do have these type of cabinets, that we either lock them or they're behind a locked doors, so that way we don't have any unauthorized use, so that way we don't run the risk of any chemical spill or chemical exposure by accident. As we talk about flammable and combustible liquids, it's important that we maintain clearance between them and any heat source. For example, this Bunsen burner that I have sitting in front of me. We want to make sure that we maintain clearance between not only the flammable and combustible liquids, but also anything that's combustible, such as these notebooks that are sitting right here. Schools are also required to develop emergency plan and procedures in case there is a chemical spill or a chemical exposure. As we can see here, we've got a chemical accident plan. So it's important that we perform periodic safety audits to ensure that those plans and those procedures are still current and relevant. So as a reminder, it's important that depending on the chemical experiments that we conduct, that we make sure that we wear our personal protective equipment such as these eyeglasses or an apron, just in case there is a chemical spill or a chemical exposure. So in summary, throughout this video, we've covered many of the important safety features and safeguards that you can find within a science or chemistry classroom. It's important that we maintain those devices, we develop those emergency plans, so that way in case there is emergency within the science or chemistry classroom, that we know what steps to take and what to do. Also too, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to call me or any other of the fire inspectors with the Colorado Springs Fire Department for further clarification on anything within this video.